Hello and welcome to the Field Engineer channel. Today, joining me, I have Vikram, Maurizio, and Paul. Welcome, gentlemen. I think everyone has been on the channel before. Today, we're going to be looking at why field service engineers sometimes feel undervalued within an organization. I think there's lots to explore here. I'm sure some of our members will have been to examples where they've done heroics and come away and perhaps not felt as valued as they perhaps feel as though they should have been. Anyway, to kick things off, I thought we'd start with a little quote. In the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. A nice short one there. If anyone knows who it's from or where it's from or who wrote it, then please comment below. Okay, I'm going to go around the table. Vikram, in your experience, do you get a sense that sometimes field service engineers are undervalued? Do you have that feeling anytime within your teams?
100%. I'm trying not to let my cynicism. Thanks everybody. Good to be here. I'm trying not to let my cynicism override this question, and it's really well framed, and I try not to get too negative about it. But yeah, I have, largely because I think services has been seen in the organizations I've been involved in as a cost center, right? Rather than as to use the quote, or to take advantage of the quote you just said, as an opportunity to get closer to the customer and develop a relationship. It's a cost center to get to the next thing of whether it's the next renewal or the next uptake or the next thing, the next checkbox. So anything to do with services, like I don't know if it's always related to the actual people there itself, but it's the structure and the function. And the way we try to address it is part of the conversation we've had before, which is service is everybody's responsibility. Just like that wonderful phrase that quality sort of has taught all of us through QMS and things, that quality is everybody's responsibility. Services starts from the first contact all the way through to all the way through to the end, whatever the end looks like. So I think it's a cultural thing. I think it is from management down. It has to be instituted, but it's not just up, down, or down, up. It has to be imbibed everywhere. The way to sort of address it, or to, I don't know about resolve, but I think it's something that it needs to be recognized that every touch point is about experience and how your client feels. So the idea that one person is more valuable or less valuable or undervalued is very sort of hierarchical, and it doesn't work that way, especially in the service industry where every touch point matters. I'm waffling a bit, but I'm trying to get to the fact that I agree with you that we do feel undervalued, and there are ways to address it.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Maurizio, what's your initial take on this topic?
Yeah, 100%. Me as well. I remember, I don't know who told me this, but it was a joke, some times ago that I heard. It was about, the manager goes to the toilet and he does what he needs to do, and then he washes her hands. The service guy goes to the toilet first, washes her hands, and then does what she needs to do, and then hopefully washes again his hands. So it's like, it's a dirty job. Yes, I mean, if I look back to pictures that I had from 20 years ago, that I was dealing with cranes, like oil all over, in the mud, rain and cold and hot, and then comes the manager, the sales guy, whoever, in his very nice car, and talks to the customer and then goes away. So it's being service, it's tough, and it's really underestimated. But as Vikram said, it's a touch point. So it's a way we can make revenue out of it, not only fix issues and solve problems. But also there was my boss, calling. I just turned it off. So this is more important. No, I was just joking. But
I'm going to leave that in the edit, by the way.
No, it is true. I mean, it's a way to remain connected with the customer. So we need to keep this in mind. Everyone in the company needs to keep this in mind. So I think it's very important, to have the chance, and that's, for example, what I try to do with the team I'm dealing with, to have chances for management people and field service to go together, for example, to the customers and spend time together. This is also very important outside of work as well. Exchange topics, because as we said many times, that the field service at the end of the day get told many things that the managers, the salespeople don't get told about, don't get talked about, and this is also the reference, the points that help make a second sales, have spare parts sold, revenue, service contract, and so on. So this is always important to, as a manager, to try to find a way to bring these people together,
Perfect.
regularly.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much. Paul, how about you? Initial thoughts on the topic?
Yeah, I mean, when we first thought about this topic, it reminded me of when I started in engineering quite a few years ago, and back then we were told in the UK that the UK didn't value engineers. And if you looked across the pond to Germany valued engineers. And now I work in a more European role, I get to see, unfortunately, the reality is that everybody doesn't value engineers now, it appears. Sadly, we have not risen to Germany's standards, they have dropped to ours. I think there is an awful lot of reasons why it happens. There is the, out of sight, out of mind. You're not in the corporate office. You're not in the head office frequently. You're on site, as Maurizio was saying, doing stuff. And so you're not seen, therefore you probably aren't doing anything. And there is it sometimes gets called the blame sponge. So if a field service engineer does their job correctly, nobody notices. Nothing happens. In fact, exactly the opposite. Everything works perfectly. The customer's happy, the engineer's happy, the company's happy. There is no emergency. Everything goes wrong, and everybody looks at the field service engineer. And so we get the reputation in the industry of being the problems, which then tends to happen is that we focus on those problems. We don't focus on all of the times it went well. We focus on the 1% the way it goes wrong. So it's really challenging to actually have a realistic conversation within organizations, because on the one hand they will thoroughly understand that service is bringing revenue into the business now, and more importantly, as we're seeing traditional revenue streams drying up, but they don't link that to the activity of the field service engineer. But equally, we in the industry have got to recognize the fact that we are our own worst enemies at times. We may well say, oh yes, but we bring in all this revenue, but the second somebody suggests that we do it, we'll run away. Oh, no, we don't have anything to do with sales, those dirty, horrible salespeople. And so we are our own worst enemies. We don't tend to be particularly good communicators. We don't relish the opportunity to communicate about the work we do and the positives that we bring to the organization. That there is a field service engineer manager that I know in this country who thinks it's his duty to promote the industry. And it was really interesting talking to him at a recent event about why he feels that. So I think it is, yes, we are undervalued as an industry. The reasons are quite complicated and in many cases very historical. But I do think we as an industry have a role to play, and probably those of us with grey hair have probably got more responsibilities to push this so that those people who are coming beneath us and behind us get an opportunity to be more valued than they should have been.
Mm-hmm. Okay, excellent, interesting points. It feels like we've started on a little bit of a downer. I will try and contra that with we all know, I'm sure, that there are superstars of field service engineers who we do value. And I remember in my previous roles having a lieutenant who is loved by customers and internally as well. There are those superstars, but I think we're talking more broadly about a general sense of a service organization. And it's interesting. I think a lot of people will say that returning customers a lot of that, when customers return, is down to service. Obviously, the sales celebrate their new sales, but any recurring, people coming back, if they've had an awful service experience, then they might switch. If their experience during the product life cycle has been brilliant, why change? So I think there is something good there. Which I guess leads me on to, how do we go about changing it? I know, Paul, you touched on it a little bit there, but if we feel that as a group, as a industry, we're undervalued, what do we do to change it? Maurizio, I'm going to throw that over to you first.
I think we have to look at service and support for the whole life cycle, experience for the end customers. So not only sales, not only support, not only customer support, logistic, finance, but to start to create or think about creating like a whole experience for the end customer that starts, of course, from the first contact with sales, but never ends. The full life cycle. And of course, support and service, has a huge role in this. And how can we do it better is try to integrate different people, different departments, team building, getting together, have regular exchange of information. So I remember to a previous company I was working for, and I found that very interesting and very critical, was having like a monthly meeting, not like a hands-on, but really sales together with service, together with logistic, together with finance, just 2-3 people from each department, in order to also exchange information, exchange suggestions, how to smoothen the whole processes, also between departments. So to get also to know the people, that you just maybe sometimes you write a couple of emails, and nowadays you don't call anymore, so you don't have you have a face and a small icon on your desktop, but you don't really get to know the person. And I think at the very beginning, when someone has the onboarding phase, to make sure this person gets a 5-minute, 15 minutes time with each person, or as much as possible, depending on how big the company is. But at least the people that this person is going in the close future, going to exchange information, to have to do things on a daily routine. So just plan a 15 minutes Teams meeting, a Zoom meeting, whatever, to just chat and present yourself and say, okay, this is who I am, this is what I do in private life, that's the kind of person, what I've done in the past. And this already smoothen the whole path of integration and making sure that people collaborate. But it's an ongoing process, and also HR has to play a huge role in this.
Okay, interesting. Paul, what are your thoughts?
I definitely, communication has got to be communication and collaboration, but we say that about pretty much everything these days, don't we? I think it's worth us bearing in mind that most of the commercial organisations that exist, so if you're not a charity or a government organisation, is run by commercial people, salespeople. And if you were to do a Myers-Briggs on the typical salesperson, if there is such a thing, and then you were to do a Myers-Briggs on a typical field service engineer, they would be poles apart. The first letter for most salespeople would be an E. The first letter for most field service engineers would be an I. So they are never going to be particularly typical bedfellows. So asking somebody that is inherently an introvert to be a great communicator is really challenging them. Now, that isn't to say that we shouldn't be encouraging, but it's to saying, honestly, it's to go back to using Myers-Briggs as it should have been used, rather than how it's often used as a screening exercise by HR. But it's to demonstrate the types of things, activities, which will really challenge someone. And someone that's an introvert is going to find it very, very difficult to speak in front of people. Doesn't matter how good they are as a technical manager, that introvert nature of theirs is going to really, really cause them a lot of problems. So that dedicated support needs to be given to much more junior managers to allow them to develop so that they have got the ability to stand up in front of a room of people and command the respect and the confidence that their position holds. I bet you all of us have got the examples of a really, really great field service manager who wasn't respected because the second that they were in a meeting, they clammed up and said nothing. I can think of about 4. And yet, so I think there's the support that we need to give those, but I think the other side of that is those of us that don't have an eye in front of their Myers-Briggs. We need to do a better job of selling field service, of what we do, where we contribute, how we support, and bring those people who struggle with us. So whether it's the field service engineers, and think about how we can develop situations that they are comfortable with. If you were to suggest, as I've had in the past, oh yeah, let's do an award ceremony, most field service engineers would rather eat their own foot than go on stage in front of 100 people and win an award. Even if the award's, £1 million, they'd still don't want to do that, because that's really way out their comfort zone. But there are alternatives. Getting a phone call from the chief executive or somebody in that level saying, hey, do you know what? Thank you. That will probably make their day and mean far more than them. Yeah, the £1 million might be quite nice, but so I think it's a duty of us as managers, as leaders, to lead. But it's also the duty of organisations to recognise that certain people are going to have inherent challenges because of their personality, and to put the support measures in place to allow them to. When was the last time you attended a presentation skills course that didn't assume that you were okay doing presentations? Yet 90% of people hate them. But we never talk about that. We never talk about how you could think about it. I find that odd.
Yeah. Excellent. Thanks very much, Paul. Vikram, over to you.
I'm thinking back to what Maurizio started with about, back in the day he started on cranes and was all dirty and, full of oil and gunk and stuff. And I'm like, oh, that sounds amazing. Like hot weather and rain and stuff, just getting my hands involved. It's been a long time since I've done anything like that. So maybe it's a bit more romantic in my assumption of that. But yeah, I think your question was, and just to confirm, was how do we change the culture, right? How do we change this?
Right.
Is that right?
How do we shift the dial? Yeah.
I'm going to give you a couple of examples of what I felt in the companies I've been in, and then what it comes down to how to change it. I would, in some of the companies, service and support was part of commercial readiness. So when a new product was far enough down the R&D pipeline, service and support was brought in to be involved in the development of their responsibility in for once things would go for launch, right? But how do you to it was very much sort of know your place, know your time. That's where you're going to come in. I would suggest, or even advocate, and to have service and support part of business decisions on the front end, just being part of the room, being there. And I think we have a responsibility. I mean, the 4 of us and people of our age and experience have a responsibility to carry that forward. Because if you leave it to convention, we will always be sort of brought in when things are dire or when it's time, as opposed to being part of that early part of the conversation, not just during design phase, but even earlier. Independent, like to Paul's point, like independence is what attracts an FSE, right? I bristled, I was uncomfortable when you even mentioned the thought of the award. I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. And it was an example, and I was just like, but we, the independence is what attracts us, but at the same time, we are an advocate for ourselves. It's not just a communication and training issue, and I agree with all of that. But I think it's the nature of the person who's attracted to it, which is what you were alluding to. Now that us 4, and then the other members of this, the organization, and are in a position of influence, small or large, we have a responsibility for our industry, because we love it and we're proud of it, and we want to champion it, to make those inroads and put that pressure on management or culturally in our organizations to say, hang on, we want to be involved. This is what's important. This is why it's important, right? I'm going through the constant refrain I've always heard from my managers or from the chain has been do more with less. Oh, budget's a bit tough. But then you look around and you go figure out where sales is having their annual conference and go, that's a fair few coin. How'd that work out? Right. So it's always how do we advocate? And you have to be a champion within yourself. It starts with us having a responsibility, to protect our team members and then move up the chain. And hopefully in the next few years it starts to change culturally and it starts small. But that's what I would suggest.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can't fix it, but yeah, I have that sense that we can probably do more. Interesting, one of the themes there is get together with other bits of the business, make sure you're in the conversations early. I mean, I personally I do go and speak to marketeers, but they're a strange breed, and I don't really understand them. But perhaps we need to spend more time so we can pick up. Well, how do we market ourselves as a service organization? How do we highlight to the business, like, we went along, we fixed something, there was no song and dance because that's our job, but if we hadn't done our job, consequences might have been a little bit dire. So how do we then promote those things that we quietly just get done and fixed, or should we? Do we need to? I think the reason we're having this conversation is because there is that little bit of a need to say, okay, some people absolutely value the service that we offer, but generally speaking, the teams that we manage, the people that we speak to, the people in the field service community do feel slightly undervalued. One thing that I also am slightly concerned about is that there is a little bit of a trap. There are those field service engineers who do want to don their capes and be Superman and make the most of when things go bad. And sometimes that's what we need, and sometimes that's great. But there is a little bit of a trap there where things don't have to be that bad, and perhaps you might get someone who exploits and maybe makes things a little bit worse, just to make the point of how wonderful they are. Has anyone had any experience of that? Any stories to share? Maybe Paul, I'll kick off with you this time.
I think we've all. I mean, there's an inherent danger of that with the kind of roles that most of our field service engineering colleagues do, because they are reactive. Everything's gone wrong. It's a major issue. Everyone's jumping up and down, and you ride in with your white horse and fix it all, like Batman, the Lone Ranger, Superman. Pick your superhero to suit, and that's very addictive. If you are the field service engineer, I mean, that's a pretty nice place to be, because you probably find that everyone's patting you on the back and buying you a coffee or a bacon sandwich or whatever at the end of the activity, and you get mentioned in a company newsletter and maybe get a bonus, and you think, well, I'll carry on doing that. But you're right, when you come down to it, what does the customer want? The customer doesn't want the thing to break in the first place. So actually, the business wants whatever the customer wants, provided they're paying for it. So really, we do want to be invisible as an organization, but that poses us a problem. I think that there's a couple of things that I think we have to make sure that we are recognizing ourselves for the right things. But the reality is that we are going to have to, as an industry, we're going to have to use somebody else's language. So, for instance, many organizations are selling a product that has a consumable. That consumable is used by the machine when it is working, and that's how the company makes its money. It's relatively easy for a service manager to calculate, okay, if I fix this machine in 1 hour, it will cost this much in lost revenue. If I fix it in 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours a day, etc., etc. So you can calculate how much revenue you have saved the company from losing. And that's one of our jobs, I think, as leaders, is to reframe response time, which is kind of like, oh yes, our response time, we've taken it down by 20%. Excellent. What does that mean? We all on this call would go, wow, that's really cool. How did you do it? What would a finance officer say? What would the accountant say? What would the salespeople say? If you told them, I've just saved you $2.5 million. What?
Right.
Suddenly you gained a completely different conversation with the C-suite or wherever you are talking to, because you've now got the credibility to say, we understand the activity we do and how it fits into the company's finances. So it does sound awful that we as an engineering group have got to start talking finance, but the reality is that if there was one thing I wished I'd have taken more of at school, it's finance, because that's an area we normally struggle in unless you happen to have a great background or a real maths ability, because unfortunately that language is what's used.
Right. Excellent point. Thanks, Paul. Vikram, any experience of those superheroes doing slightly negative superhero things?
Yeah, I think sure, absolutely, we've got that, and my responsibility as being a leader there is to sort of weed out that sort of, it's a we thing, it's not an I team, that sort of stuff, and bring it out. It does happen, and it's the nature of the role. I think, Paul, you hit the. I mean, I just was nodding vigorously with Paul's points of, we have to speak in the language and phrasing and what with whom we're trying to communicate with. If you're speaking with finance or C-suite or marketing or whomever you're talking to, actually, if you think about it, we do it naturally. We're naturally sort of these, when we're dealing with clients and customers, you're working with a front desk or the logistics, or how we talk to an instrument operator versus how we talk to the lab director. We're naturally sort of malleable enough to be able to sort of say, look, I need a few more hours. I need this. I need that. We're able to do that and communicate and say, this is why it's important. But when it goes up the chain, we sort of, again, we think it's self-promotion or whatever, but we don't advocate for it. 100%, I think finance course or business accounting course is fundamental for all of us, just to grow anyway. But how best can you communicate that so it's relevant? So when you talk to me about something and you're speaking in a language that is relevant, not just towards me, my department, but also to the company proper. So if I'm talking with a director of logistics, it's are we talking about the number of how much money we've saved on parts, how much money we've saved on labor in addressing some of this, how much money we've saved on storage because we've shifted the way we order things, or how close we, all of these things have to be relevant to the people we're speaking with. And my goodness, isn't that what we do in our other areas of life? But for some reason, we get a little bit, and I don't know if it's just the field engineers that do this, but we get a little bit sort of insular and a little bit resistant to it. And I think part of the training that Maurizio was talking about of breaking bread and talking with people and getting to know them is also having structured sort of, this is important. You need technical skills, you need administrative skills to how to be organized. You need these functions of business accounting, communication. All of these are skills to be learned. If you put any one of us in a course to learn about whether it was programming or how to work on an instrument, we'd be so thrilled. Would be just notes and we'd share about it, and we talk about it with great interest and zeal. But if you put me in a course about business accounting, I'd grudgingly go through it, at least when I was younger. Now I'd show more keenness to it. It is part of it. You have to treat it as a function of, it's non-negotiable. This is if you want to be an engineer, field engineer, this is what is required. You look at it as a systems perspective, right? It's all holistic. Every part counts. I'm using another analogy now. It's a circuit. It's a closed circuit. If any one part of that is not there, it's an open circuit. It's not going to work. How do you engage? And again, it's our. I'm putting it all on us now. It's our responsibility because we've come through that side. We've pushed through that barrier of frustration from higher to the higher ups and all that. Now we're in a little bit of position of responsibility or accountability or power or whatever you want to call it, and influence. We should advocate and we should push that. It's our job to, and I think we're doing it. But yeah.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Vikram. Maurizio, your thoughts on this piece?
Yeah, data and KPIs are nowadays really bread and butter on what we need to bring up with upper management, definitely to discuss. And I think an easy way would be, for example, if we have the chance to talk, to upper management about escalation topics, for example, would be to mention people of your team, and making sure that all these different people get mentioned. Because sometimes there are escalation, and this escalation gets brought up to upper management. That's your chance, of talking to someone who's a higher level. And at that point, you can mention someone's name and say, okay, look, we fixed it, but we fixed it because this person of my team, name, was able to stay there longer, and at the end, he fixed it, right? And then the upper management will say, who, right? Who is it? Never heard of this person. And then that's the chance, so we have to make sure that we give we mention these people, so we give credibility to these people, and we bring their names up when we have the possibilities. And to your question, Charlie, yes, there's always someone who tries to be the hero and try not to hide it. And what Vikram said is very also crucial. And we are a team, so we have to make sure that also, if you were the hero and you fixed it, share with us how you made it, how you did it, right? Share this kind of information with us, because it's important, especially for the younger ones, to understand, to learn the tricks. In this job, there's a huge amount of tricks that we have learned because we've done this job for 20 years. So I remember one of the first tricks was like how to put a spring on a motor brake. That's the first trick I learned. I've never thought of it, and now, of course, trick, and you show it to someone and make someone's day, and then he can ditch to the next one. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to pick up on a few things that I've heard there. So I think KPIs, we talk about KPIs a lot. I think Paul's point there of a KPI of value that we didn't miss out on because we got the thing. We talk about uptime, we talk about response time, but when was the last time we said, you know what, this quarter we saved $10 billion because the things weren't down for, our equipment wasn't down for longer, and therefore we didn't miss out on these consumables. When was the last time we did that? I'll hold my hand up. I can't think of a time when that's been relevant. I have got times where there's been a big issue. Oh, we're on top of it. We've solved it. Don't worry about it. But I've never put in terms of, we've just saved $1 million, $2 million, whatever it may be. So I think that's an interesting point to pick up. Visibility we touched on earlier as well. I think because our teams are in the field, and I for one, I love getting teams together to create that kind of team bond, but it's very difficult to get all of your field people all together at once, and invariably someone's going to be out covering the emergencies. So I think getting the teams together is important, but tactics on how you get visibility within the broader organization. The local salesperson might know their engineer, they might not, but people in the office probably see engineers as they pop in, maybe pick up some parts, maybe they're in there for training, and maybe that's on us to, when we do have those opportunities in an office environment, to make sure that people know that it's happening and have that opportunity to meet and greet and break bread and all the rest of it. And then the final piece, I think, just picking up on Maurizio's point there, yes, you've got the superheroes. Really important that you've got the systems and knowledge database for those little tricks of the trade that maybe not be covered, that maybe aren't covered in training, but you need to be able to capture those tips and tricks. And have a system behind it so that it doesn't become tribal knowledge and you lose that when someone experienced retires, moves on, whatever. Final thoughts, gentlemen. Vikram, final thoughts.
I think I'm coming back to this. I think now that we, and I'm saying we, the four of us, are in positions of experience and responsibility. It's for us to really advocate, and it's one thing for us to sort of talk amongst ourselves of, oh, this could be better, that could be better. We're going to have to get our hands dirty and muddy and bloody, and have those fights with management and really advocate for that. The communication thing is really, really important of whom you are communicating to. If I was speaking to a teenager versus my toddler, what I'm going to say may be the same content or the same theme, but how I'm going to say it is going to be vastly different. I'm not suggesting for 1 minute the C-suite are toddlers or teenagers in any way.
Sounded like it.
But it is important to know that. But that's it in itself, a skill. You don't just assume it. Sometimes you can learn it from. Okay, Paul's a phenomenal teacher. He's a phenomenal leader. I'm working with Maurizio for the last 30 years. I'm using as examples. I've been working under him. I've learned from these wonderful teachers. What if you don't have that? That's institutional knowledge. What happens if they leave? What happened? So that's not a plan for success, as it were. So how do you communicate that? The thoughts are that now that we're aware of this, and to be honest, we've been aware of it for a while. I've just looked into look in my cup and whinge about it with everybody else. What can we do about it, and how do we push it forward? I think these discussions are very important. I think this forum, the field engineer, is very important in that, of starting that, and it is a slow, steady process. And we don't have to be rah-rah about it. It's just this strong strength that comes from actually achieving things and having a level of confidence of, hey, we're part of that, not just the tip of the spear from a customer contact standpoint, but also solutions, also revenue, whatever, insert point of value here. And we can be proud of it, right? We tend to, or at least the people I've talked to, we tend to shirk. It was like, no, it's not a big deal. When given any praise, it's like, yeah, no big deal. But it is a big deal, and it's our responsibility now that we have that to say to advocate for that. So Mauricio's point of mentioning that to in communications to senior management and things, whether it's through newsletters or announcements or whatever, being really firm with there. And it's uncomfortable. I've had to do that. And you can see the other people sort of roll their eyes. Oh, Vikram is going on in one of his soliloquies again about all of his team. It doesn't matter. It's important. You've got to advocate, and that's where that they see that it's a we thing, that we're all in it together, right? And again, it's leadership by example, right? No one's going to do it if we don't. We have to step up, and we have the ability.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Vikram. Maurizio, final thoughts from you.
Yes, absolutely. Advocate. Make sure that we think about having time together in our calendar, slots defined, where we can get people to talk together, from different hierarchy. And we have to be strong as a leader and try not to get credit for people of our team, when we are talking with other departments, and making sure names of these people, they come through, they get to be known by other people from other departments, and make sure we talk a lot also with HR and people excellence, people development, all these kind of roles which are made, and they're there exactly for this purpose, to make sure that the company is one company when it's on site, and when it's exchanging information with the customer, it's one company, it's one goal, and that we are one team. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Maurizio. Paul, final thoughts from you.
You know what? I was reflecting over the last 45 minutes of us talking, and it does seem as if we've been a bit negative. Now, whether that's, you put a bunch of field engineers or field engineering managers in a room, we're always negative, I don't know. So I wanted to finish on a slightly more positive spot, and I have reason to believe that things may change. So I said right at the start that when I was first entered the industry many years ago, that we always felt that engineers were undervalued, sometimes because out of sight, out of mind. What I am noticing is that the next generation of field service engineers are much better at highlighting to the rest of the world what they do. YouTube, Instagram, they seem to be really, really good at putting together these short films on the weird and wonderful ways in which they're contributing, the different places that they work in, the situations and circumstances that I could never have imagined. That inevitably is going to highlight the sheer diversity of what a field service engineer is, and will promote the industry. So I have cause to actually be a little more positive that the next generation isn't going to be hampered by the same things that we are, because I'm probably too old to learn how to be a YouTuber now. But it appears that
you are one, Paul.
well, possibly, yes. These people are, the new generation are really, really good at it, and they are becoming phenomenal communicators in that art form. Really, really impressive stuff. And I think, wow, do you know what? And maybe it's time for us, and I have got the grey hair, so I can justify it, to a certain extent, get out the way and let them shine.
Mm-hmm. Nice place to end. Thank you very much, Paul. Gentlemen, thanks all very much. I'm going to bring us back to the quote I started with. In the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. It was from The Art of War, a good business book if you want to have a read. I'm all about the book recommendations. Hopefully our listeners and viewers have found this instructive and has had a thought-provoking effect on you. Please do like and subscribe the channel. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. We are close to the 500 subscribers mark, so every little helps. So please do help us out. Hit the subscribe button. It's completely free. Gentlemen, again, thanks very much, and we will see you on the next one.